Hey everybody, so this episode ran a little bit longer than we anticipated it to be. We originally wanted it to actually be one half of an hour long episode, and we realized that we got so excited and had so much information on this that it ended up being a two-parter. So what we've done is we've cut it down straight through the middle, and we've tried to make it cohesive so that you're able to listen to part one and part two. And we'll release part one this week, but we'll also release part two next week. So hopefully you're okay with waiting for the rest of the information that was discovered. Please don't hold that against us. We're trying our best as podcasters.
You know, while we're still doing this front matter about stuff, you know, because this is like my third last full day in Johannesburg, and I've been going to this gym, this Virgin Active here, and over the past 7-8 months, I have managed to make like 3 friends, so 2.5 maybe.
That's solid, actually.
No, Mukisa, it's
That's not bad.
No, I have, the first friend I think I made like probably a month 2 or something. And then the second one, or the second and a half, the 1.5. Okay, so there's actually 1.5, then there's another +1. It's like, I don't know. Like that was, oh my God, it was actually so weird.
Wait, what the hell does half mean?
Half means like, I don't know, half. It's like we chat, but we don't chat about like in depth, you know.
Yeah.
But it was actually super awkward. So I'm visiting like cable crunch. This is like when I was like, oh, does this dude want to be my friend? I'm doing like cable crunches, and then he comments on like the weight I'm using or whatever, and I'm like, yeah, haha, and then I just do my own thing. And later I'm just like, wait, was he trying to talk to me? Did he want to chat? And I literally felt like I spoke to my friend, one of my friends that night, and I was like, I realized what he did. I kind of think I should be like, yo, I am just awkward. I've got like too much social anxiety.
Yeah.
I just don't think anyone wants to be my friend. So can you please just whatever, but just like explaining my lack of social ability.
This is hilarious because I'm now remembering back to our time at school, and I was like, this makes sense for your character. Like, you definitely had social anxiety back then too. Like, it was very much.
I still have. It's crazy. Like, I spend so much. I can sit next to someone at gym and I'll be like, oh, this dude, I should probably talk to this person. I probably spend like the whole time psyching myself out and never do it. It's scary. It's actually like, it's a hindrance to my progress in like making friends, because I think that like for some reason these people aren't going to like me, or whatever it is, they're not going to like me, and I just don't want to deal with that. So I'm just like, let me just like stick in my zone, which leads to me appearing unapproachable. Then people just don't approach me. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's a cyclical, like, I'm gonna be hard because I'm protecting myself. Oh, people think I'm hard, they're not gonna talk to me. So I need to just like find a like so going to Cape Town, I'm going to a new gym, and I need to be like someone who's like, hey, what's up? You know?
Yeah, because you realize you have a completely new opportunity here to make a whole new personality. Like, nobody there will know you. Who you were in high school, at least from what I remember, was also kind of like a socially awkward dude. You had social anxiety for sure. But we became friends. It was like you were very friendly once you got to, like, you actually like spoke to people and you were like,
it's so weird. I am such a weird person, yeah.
It's that pre-phase. It's like before you're like, I don't know what's going to go on. Which is hilarious. Yeah. Everyone has it. I guess I can't call it social anxiety because I would talk to people in the gym if I truly wanted to, but I'm very much someone who appreciates my solitude. Like, I really just like being on my own. So if somebody comes and speaks to me, I will happily oblige and talk to them and whatever. But the only reason I'm approaching someone at the gym is if I genuinely want to converse with them, which most of the time is just, I don't. So like, I'm just like choosing not to.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean? It's not like a sitting there of like trying to go and speak to the person. It's mostly just like, I'm like, I don't really want to talk to anyone today.
I mean, that's me most of the time. Most of the time, I'm like fine in my zone. But then like these homies have homies. They have like friends. So I'm like, yo, it'd be cool to be in part of that friend group. But I'm just like this awkward guy. And I also like don't really like, I don't know what I look like to other people. So I'm just thinking that like, I'm just like this dude who's just like this weird dude in the corner here. He's just like doing and actually no, I just like dance. I basically like just like all the time. I'm literally just like mouthing lyrics. I even like got to the point where like I will keep if I'm like walking into the bathroom, and I'm mouthing lyrics, and someone's I will keep mouthing those lyrics as I walk towards you, person I don't know. I'll just stick to my. And I feel like that's me building confidence, you know?
No, that's fair. No, I do think that's building confidence. I also think, I don't know, the gym is just like such a kind of awkward place because it is that mix of like people who are there purely to like work out. They don't want anybody talking to them. They're just strictly there for business, and they'll leave. And then there's people who are super friendly, which can then like lead you into those running clubs, which are not so secret, like dating clubs really. Like it's just people's like little ways of like just getting to know each other outside of like one of the apps,
Tinder.
you know? Yeah. But it feels like you got to find that dichotomy. It's like who, but I also realized that like, at least when I was at the gym back in uni, was that like at a certain point, I saw someone way too often to not say something. It was almost like life was like, yeah, you can't ignore this person, because it didn't matter what time I was going.
Happened.
Right. It doesn't matter what time you're going. They just happen to be going at that same time on the same day. And it's like, this makes no sense. We didn't plan this. How is it that we're seeing each other at completely random times during the week? And at that point, you're like, I have to say hello, or I have to acknowledge the person, you know? Which turns into like initial nods and then grows into like, hello, how are you? I'm this person.
How you doing? It's like, oh, what do you do?
Yeah.
You're an accountant. Interesting.
I don't know. We can be strangers to people enough. Like we can ignore people enough. At least I feel, which is good.
Yeah, no facts. I probably ignore most people in my life. Well, not in my life, but like that exist in my world.
From what you've just told me, you probably ignore people who you even don't want to ignore.
No, 1,000,000,000%.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes it's like, oh no, literally. So friend two, like, so there's friend one, friend half, friend two. So friend two, he has so many friends. Like he has like, there's so many people who he is friends with. And then like, sometimes he's training with people and I see him, that's the first time I avoid him until he's alone. At which point I'm like, hey, what's up? Let me chat. Because it's like, this group of people, you guys are too scary. You guys are way too scary.
Yeah. Like there's too many of you. Like it's just...
Yeah.
Even
though I'm just like, I wish I was one of you.
You know, you get that feeling where you're like, I feel like I'm too late to join in on this bandwagon now. You know what I mean? You're like, these people have already established themselves. Like, I don't want to jump into anything. Like, I don't feel like you know,
leaving, so
which is like,
you know? Plus
you're leaving. Yeah, that too. That also doesn't help. It's like, hey guys, let's be friends. And then you disappear from their lives forever.
Like, this is... Oh, it's crazy. We're like, we're friends, we exchange Instagram. Then I do a thirst trap that night. Then it's like, whoa, what happened here? What is this?
It's
I didn't know you did this.
Was I... What's wild about your thirst traps, actually, this needs to be acknowledged on the pod as well.
Okay.
What's wild about your thirst traps is that like they're often the first thing I see in the morning. Because you know how Instagram...
Sometimes I take them first thing in the morning.
Okay, that makes
like
sense.
Today's one.
Yeah, that makes sense. But that's why I was like, because Instagram will obviously put the people who you interact with or engage with most, you know, to the front. So I'll just be scrolling and then I'll just like open up Instagram and Akha's posted something. Bam, thirst trap. First thing in the morning. I'm like, it's a Wednesday morning. Like, what is happening?
You know, because I actually don't even know, like, if they're thirst traps, though. Like, are they thirst? They definitely are thirst traps. Okay.
There's no way they aren't thirst traps. I mean, I was called a slut for showing leg.
I just think I look sick. You know, I just think I look sick.
You do, which is why it's okay. Like, it's...
Yeah, okay.
Like, that's what I'm saying. I'm not complaining, but I am just saying that it's like, it's often like okay, cool. This is how I'm waking up today. Fine. Like, that's how it is.
And that's what people like. People like that kind of content. So it's kind of like,
True.
I'm just like content creator pulled, and that like, I just give the people what they want. Like, I think that yesterday, I think I posted I put on my story one of the collages Google did.
Yes.
And that was a collage of probably me in front of the same mirror, except I had hair. More hair than I did. So like a 2-day-old photo. Probably like, I don't know, but it's the last time they'll probably see thirst traps of that ilk until like for a while. Because I'm not going to have this mirror anymore, you know? I'll be in Cape Town.
Yeah, but you're going to have a bathroom mirror, right?
I will. But it has to look...
yeah, no, the lighting has to be right and shit. I get you.
Yeah, so we'll see. We'll see if the people get more thirst traps.
We'll see if the people will get what they want. You know what's actually particularly interesting about thirst traps, though, is that, like, I love how this is how we're starting our pod, by the way.
Yeah.
So I've been called out about my behavior. Apparently my behavior on Instagram has been... I've noticed with, like, thirst trap posts, like, I've been told that my thirst trapping is implicit in that it's not direct. You know, I'll post cats. I'll try to be very humorous with things that I know particularly that women would be drawn to, right? Like, I'm a very goofy guy. I'm a very silly dude, and I'm also like, I don't know. I'm heterosexual. I'm heteronormative, but I'm also like, I get allegations of being bi all the time from my friends as well, because I don't entirely act typically heteronormative in certain aspects. at least what people often say.
Fair.
And so, like, they would call me slutty for posting things like that. And then sometimes I fully lean into it, and it's so funny because those ones where I lean into it get the most engagements, which then tells me that, like, people actually do want the slutty behavior. They want it. They're calling me up for it, but it's like, you want the slutty, like, you want me to post that shit. Yeah,
it's what the people want. It's what the people.
You
People
gotta
wake
give
up
it
their
to them.
horny.
Yeah, you gotta give it to them. You gotta give them the content that they need. First thing in the morning is a bit wild.
That's when you're dry. Like I'm very dry first thing in the morning. Like if I do a thirst trap late at night, I'm bigger than I am. Like my muscles I look fuller than in the morning. In the morning, I'm very like dry. But actually,
I guess that makes sense.
There's been a mix of both. I don't know if you could actually probably tell just by looking at my because it's dark in like early in the morning and late at night, so like you wouldn't be able to tell just by that.
I still just want to point out that saying that's when you're dry is raucous. Like that's wild imagery. Like that's when you're dry.
No, dry isn't
good
like
God.
Water, like leanness. By that I just mean like min water content. Like you.
I know
wake
what you mean, but it doesn't make it any less wild. Holy shit! I was like, most dry. What? Oh, he meant water. Okay, no shit. We should start this episode.
We should start. What is up, listeners? You're listening to the Pink Notice podcast, hosted by me, Akha, and my esteemed co-host, Mukisa Mujilizi. Today, it's going to be a different kind of episode as opposed to our last 3 episodes, I believe. Today, we're going to be covering some recent events. I'll be talking about the VBS scandal, collapse, bank mishap, and Mukisa will be talking about South Africa's first parliamentary debate of the new government, of the new GNU government, of the incestuous GNU that we have here. I mean, it's not even I don't even know if incestuous is the right word. And then we'll end off with some little Ameribu Kamala friendly content.
I did want to add to your intro there actually and say that what makes today's episode I think particularly interesting is that it's more of a deep dive into specifically South African politics, because I mean obviously in the past few episodes we were speaking more generally about leftist politics and like what we sort of stand for, and also a very particular case study on the bishops issue. So now it's more of like we're actually taking a bit of a deep dive into South African politics and kind of looking at it square in the face and being like, yeah, what's going on? What can we say about it? And also, how can we learn with our listeners about these topics? Because we should point out that
1,000%. We did research.
Yeah, we did research, actually. This isn't just like off the dome. Like we took time to do the research on this. And so you, the listeners, are actually technically learning with us throughout this process, while we're also picking up on little bits and pieces. So if we do get things wrong, we do apologize. And if there's certain things that we might, sort of clarify or whatever we might need to do, we will do that. But hopefully our research was thorough enough. And hopefully you give us enough grace to sort of go on this journey with us, because we're not experts by any stretch of the imagination. But we do know a little bit about some things. And hopefully that little bit can guide us throughout this process with you.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll just start getting into it then.
Yeah.
We'll start with the VBS stuff. And let me just situate us as to like, why VBS, or what in particular we're going to be chatting about. So on the 11th of July, 2024, there was this affidavit that was released as a part of Tshifhiwa Matodzi. He was the former chairman of VBS, and an affidavit was publicized as a part of his plea bargain, in which he accepted a 495-year sentence, which was effectively reduced to about 15 years of imprisonment. So I think that those are that's 15 times some number, and I think they're all running concurrently or simultaneously. So that's what we're talking about. I mean, I heard stuff about like billions of rands was looted, and I'd heard VBS for a while. I mean, as you will soon find out, there was a investigation conducted by Workman's attorneys and some other person, but that was commissioned by the South African Reserve Bank into like how VBS collapsed, because that was around the time of the collapse, 2018. So let's just start off with what VBS is,
Yeah.
So VBS is a mutual bank. And according to Wikipedia, because I didn't know what a mutual bank was, a mutual bank is a cooperative financial institution owned by its depositors or customers. They include mutual organization, mutual savings banks, and cooperative banking. Unlike traditional banks, which prioritize shareholder profits, mutual banks focus on serving their members' interests. That is what a mutual bank is. What's also interesting is VBS itself has like shareholders that aren't the depositors as well. But yeah, anyway, so VBS Bank, they were founded in 1982, and just want to preface this by saying that I pulled on three main sources for this piece. The first source is that report, VBS Mutual Bank, The Great Bank Heist. It's the investigator's report to the Prudential Authority by Advocate Terry Motau, assisted by Workmen's attorneys. So that's the one source. And another source we have is the actual affidavit by Tshifhiwa Matodzi. And the third is what was my primer to this topic, which was a podcast episode by SMWX. He is South African as well. He covered this among some other topics. Super cool podcast. I discovered it when I decided to do VBS stuff. I discovered the podcast and I'm a fan. I've listened to 2 episodes so far. Super cool. You guys should check him out. But anyway, VBS had its origins in Bantustan, South Africa. And in this situation, there was a situation in which the apartheid government created quasi-independent homelands for Black South Africans. And in these homelands, the people didn't own the land, the government did. So you were entitled to occupy it, but you couldn't use the land as collateral. If you want to get a loan or something, you don't have the asset. So enter VBS, who allowed people to take out loans against the land that they occupied, which I think is, on the face of it, this is a good idea.
Yeah.
This is like I don't know, like you're financially empowering those who are underserved by the system of unequal land relations in apartheid South Africa. So sure, good idea.
And I'm pretty sure the EFF, at least as part of their manifesto, was calling for South African sort of land, a bank that is actually very similar to what you're describing. A human settlement bank is what the ANC was actually calling for. The EFF was actually also calling for a national bank that is specific to land rights. I think it's on the face of it, it's an objectively good thing to do, and then we'll work off that basis, I guess. If we
and actually, I'm happy that you brought up the EFF because I will not bring up the EFF in what I've been talking about, and that is purely because if you go on News 24 and you look up VBS, you're probably going to see some story about I think it's 17 odd million that was donated to the EFF by VBS, and I think peanuts. Those are peanuts as far as I'm concerned
compared to the rest of the scandal.
It is very much worth looking into, sure, but I don't want to say that it's a much bigger issue. What has happened is a lot bigger than just they gave money to this one party. I mean, I think there was over almost 1.7 billion rand. This is somewhere in my notes, but that's how much was
yeah, I see.
So I'm not going to put that other amount at the forefront. But there is more to the story. I'm not while I am a socialist and the manifesto is the most socialist-y, I'm not mentioning them to not throw dirt on their name just because I just don't think it's important for this primer. So anyway, this VBS. So in 2010, the business is not doing very well. There are various attempts at a sort of corporate takeover. Eventually, Tshifhiwa Matodzi comes in through this other entity called Jambeu, and they do a coup. So they're basically a bunch of business people in Limpopo, including the vendor king, and they take over a certain portion of the bank. And a note that I made is that at some point in time between I guess 2010 and whatever, there's a point where they actually suspend Matodzi because they think he's doing shady stuff. But then the vendor king apparently persuades them to bring him back. And Matodzi also ends up running Vele Investments, which will become very interesting later, who also grew the shareholdership in the bank from 4% to 50%.
Whoa!
In the space of a year. And also, okay, so this isn't actually in my notes, but I remember that Matodzi enters through with this other Jambeu entity, but he ends up getting power of the bank through this other Vele Investments entity. So he ditches the people who brought him in for this other entity that he then uses to allegedly sprinkle on top of all of this.
Yeah, we need to put allegedly, a big fat allegedly on everything.
So how did he do that though? How did he go from 4 to 50? He allegedly created fraudulent transactions from VBS into Vele and then used those transactions into Vele to buy shareholding in VBS.
Yeah, that seems like fraud.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's just amazing.
Isn't that a Ponzi scheme? But I guess business-wise, not necessarily a Ponzi scheme actually, because that's multiple people. Whereas in this case, he's just using.
It is fraud though.
Yeah. It's definitely fraud. What kind? We don't know. But
yeah, it is fraud. But also in this the Saab investigation, that report, they didn't actually interview Matodzi, and they say, quote unquote, the most central character in this whole saga, Matodzi, who was the chairman of both VBS and Vele during the period covered by the investigation, was not interviewed. That was the result of a considered and deliberate decision. The overwhelming evidence that has been gathered from numerous sources reveals Matodzi to be the kingpin in the fraudulent and theftuous, that's got red squiggly lines, but it has to be a word, surely.
I mean, yeah.
It's legalese, if not English. Conduct of VBS's business. He, his companies, and his associates have been positively identified as the main beneficiaries of this massive fraud. Now, I just want to step aside and say that is from a report that was done in 2018. Fast forward to 2024, this dude has an affidavit, and on that basis of that affidavit, he has a plea deal, or he enters into a plea deal. That's a part of the thing. So, firstly, he's this most central. He did the most crimes, but now you're allowing this dude to do this plea deal. I don't know how those two things jive.
Right.
Because even in the plea deal, he makes he calls out people and he's like, no, this person did this. He makes accusations, and these accusations haven't been tested. It's just someone saying this thing happened.
Right.
Sure, it's legal, whatever, but it is just him saying this is what happened.
Yeah.
We don't know if that's what happened. He is just oathing to that having had happened.
Yes.
English is wild.
Until there's evidence to prove what he's saying, right? Because I think that's how plea deals work, or at least some of them, from my understanding. And by the way, my understanding of legal work, even while there are many legal people in my family, it is purely through television. So don't even come for me if I say this. But I would assume that plea deals work in the case that we promise to reduce your sentence, provided that you provide us with information that is helpful to the case. But if you can't prove what you're saying, then that's not going to be helpful to the case, and therefore your plea deal will be null and void, right? At least that's what.
So does this mean that some of his assertions have been confirmed, or there's, I guess there has to be some
there has to be something
because otherwise I can say whatever, and then why would you accept what I say?
Exactly. There has to be some sort of evidence provided. At least there has to be something of substance there for them to... Why did you just LeBron James?
I put a tinfoil hat on.
Oh, okay. I see.
Because I'm about to say...
Yeah.
Because as we said, it's interesting that this guy got a plea deal. And I wonder if this was a situation in which I will throw some people under the bus. Not the main people. Not the important people, but I'll throw some people under the bus. And in doing that, I will get a lighter sentence, and you other people will not get harmed. So it's a win-win, I guess.
Yeah, and it's you'll look after me once I get out.
Yeah. But to be fair, this guy has a lot of money, so
so it doesn't even matter.
Himself.
Yeah. Well, surely they're auditing him. Surely. He's committed deep levels
Maybe
of fraud.
They are.
His money can't possibly be all valid. There's no ways you look at someone who did this and then be like, oh yeah, but the other money he has, that's fine. I don't know. It just
that is probably certainly true. But also, he would have to get the money, because this money was taken out of VBS Bank, and that money didn't end up in a couch. It ended up in another bank. And this other bank should have done their due diligence. And if they did, or didn't, for whatever reason, they allowed him to put this money into this bank account, seeing that these sorts of funds were dubious if they did proper investigations.
Right.
And my question then is that, how are these institutions letting him do this? Are they involved as well? Question mark. This isn't an accusation. This is a question. Is this country so corrupt that even our private institutions, which are so heralded by some people, participate in the looting of the state? I think one could argue. How is it that billions of rands? How do these things happen? How is there looting at such a massive scale, and for somehow all these banks that keep money do know nothing about it? I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah. No. It's a completely valid statement to make. And also something that you say one could argue. I would say one should argue that there is something there to be asked. Because, the apartheid government was also notoriously corrupt. And, I'm talking about outside of the sort of legalized apartheid state that they were running. They were also notoriously incredibly corrupt. And the systems of private banking and so on and so forth, and corporations and whatever, they were equally involved in the sort of corrupt business. They were all...
The kickbacks, the corruption. Yeah.
Exactly. They were maintaining their power within their system. I also wanted to point out that giving a plea deal to the guy who's seemingly the mastermind of this all also doesn't make sense, because it's I thought a plea deal is given to someone on the lower end of the spectrum to then oust the big boys. So then you aren't losing too much face. Because if you're just going to release one of the big boys who did this, and then he's like, I'll just give you some of the underlings, then I'm lost and confused at this point. Because how can you call him the head honcho and then also equally be like, no, but we'll also let you go if you just tell us what you did or didn't do. You know what I mean? It's confusing.
I guess I would add, maybe it's in defense of what has happened, that I guess the prosecutor didn't conduct the investigation. It was another entity that did the investigation. So maybe the prosecutor found some other information.
Yeah.
Maybe the prosecutor found another head honcho. Maybe the original report was wrong in some aspects. I am just, listeners, speculating here. I think my personal opinion is irrelevant.
Being very
If it
legal.
is legally actionable, it is irrelevant, my personal opinion. If it is not, then then we can have another conversation. Okay, let's just get back to. Oh yes.
Okay,
yes,
yeah,
do we
no.
have more
My
editorial- yes.
last little tidbit is something that I do know is that if the prosecutor doesn't actually have enough of a substance for their case, they will often offer a plea deal so that they can get something out of it. In which case, this would also kind of make sense, I guess, if they're like, look, we can't actually get the evidence that we need to actually make a dent into this case that we want to. So how about we offer a plea deal to him so that he can provide us with that evidence so that we do have something to give up? Because otherwise, then maybe our case falls apart, in court, and it might be legal battles for years and years and years. So that might also be a consideration. But again, listeners, pure speculation.
Pure conjecture. This is satire. This is VB who,
Okay, sorry. Okay, let's keep going.
So this is, I'm just going to dive into like some stuff that I captured from the original 2018 report. So this is like just what has happened. So and against the backdrop of a severe liquidity crisis in like March 2018, the bank was placed under curatorship by the Minister of Finance. And that basically meant that they didn't have cash. They might have on the books had things, but they didn't actually have cash. So in 2018, April, an investigation was started to figure out whether or not a few things. One, any of the business of VBS was conducted with the intent to defraud depositors or other creditors of the bank or for any other fraudulent purpose. Two, VBS's business conduct involved questionable and or reckless business practices or material non-disclosure with or without the intent to defraud depositors and other creditors. And three, there had been any irregular conduct by VBS shareholders, directors, executive management, staff, stakeholders, and or related parties. So what happened here? Was there fraudulent stuff that was done? For what purpose?
Yeah.
Any fraud, we are going to figure out what happened here.
Right.
And this investigation, they found two main pillars that they say ultimately resulted in the collapse of VBS. And the first was the capture of VBS, which enabled them to do the widespread looting. And in this capturing, there were three processes at play. The first was there were payments of very large sums of money to the perpetrators as a reward, substantial bribes to certain VBS directors and other parties as hush money. Two, campaign to attract substantial demands from municipalities and other state entities, for example, PRASA, the Passenger Rail Agency of South Africa, by payment of commissions to solicit the deposit. Yes, that demands was meant to be deposit, I think that's a typo. So basically included the payments of bribes to various public officials who could influence where the deposits were made. And the third was that they manipulated the banking system by creating fictitious deposits and quote unquote obliterated overdrawn accounts to the tune, I wrote rune here, to the tune of hundreds of millions of rands. So I just want to take us back to last episode when I said that money is infinite, effectively. These are banks creating fake money.
Yeah.
I mean, real money, but it's fake. I mean, anyway.
No, it's valid and it's important because it's like at no point is that money actually touching the population.
Money has no basis in reality, actually. It's not like, it's not linked to a gold thing. I mean, gold has a value linked to money, sure, but it's not like if a bank creates more money, which banks do all the time,
right,
when they issue credit, there's nothing, the only thing backing that is a credit agreement that you have that you're going to pay back the credit. I mean, there's no like actual, I don't know, gold that was extra mined.
Yeah, no, completely true. Yeah. And it's interesting because like this is how I often think about like, I don't know, the way billionaires sort of function, which is just that like a whole lot of the money that a lot of them run off of the buy, borrow, die philosophy, which is literally just I'm going to borrow money from the banks because I have a whole shit ton of assets, and then it'll just it's essentially just selling off my assets to the banks so that they can give me a bunch of money. That's essentially how their money is, and they claim that they're not liquid or whatever. But if you're claiming that you're not liquid but you can still obtain money from banks, then it means you have that money. That money is available to you, it is accessible to you. But you never touch that money because it's constantly flowing in an area or a zone where no human like actually touches physical cash. You know what I mean? It's like banks sending numbers to each other, if that makes sense.
It's an entry in the Excel spreadsheet.
Entirely. Yeah, precisely. That's exactly what it is. Because I was thinking until one of them like hires a private jet, but even then they don't have to touch the money for that. That's just money going from account A to account B, and then promising that account B will send money through to account C, and then it's like none of this is real.
What you're talking about, there is an example of this, of what we're this will come up obviously in this VBS story. But that was the first pillar that we just spoke about. And the second pillar is basically that not only did they loot, they hid that they looted, which enabled them to continue looting and to loot more. And this is basically their fraudulent misrepresentations in their audited annual financial records for the year ending March 2017, 31st of March 2017. And they also misrepresented in monthly regulatory returns they were obliged to make to the registrar of banks. Their misrepresentations misled the registrar into believing they were financially sound, whereas its liabilities exceeded its assets by about 180 million rand that year, which actually meant that the bank was insolvent. and by the time the bank, because this was 2017, and by the time the bank was actually placed under curatorship, which is a year later, the position was exponentially worse, the report says. So that's a brief overview, and let's just dive into let's just have a touch into the extent of the looting. So the extent of the looting. Okay, so in the course of conducting the investigation, there were forensic accountants, and they compiled a report into how much money was gratuitously, without good reason, received from VBS by about 53 persons of interest, which includes both humans and legal people. And that's just the first layer, right? So
yeah,
you can imagine that this, a tree with 53 nodes at the top, whatever thing that makes, it just branches out. And 53, I mean, who knows? Will we ever know the full extent to who benefited from this looting? I do not think we will.
In fact, I was going to say there is even cause to say that at the bottom of those routes of those networks, there are people who received that money and didn't realize where it was from or what it what it was about. You know what I mean? There were people who were using that money thinking this is very legitimate and whatever. It's just money that we got from the organization.
I mean, even in this dude's affidavit, he speaks. I mean, I didn't mention it here because we're at an hour already. But I haven't even got to his affidavit, but he speaks about I think he tries to exonerate his family, saying that they didn't know or some stuff like that. I didn't even actually read what he said. This is just what I have heard the reporting on that. I know I tweeted, listeners, if you follow me on Twitter, that I was going to read all 70 pages.
I saw that, yeah.
That's a lot to cover in this tiny little episode that we're going to do. So I did not do all 70 pages. I just went where my sleuthing brain took me. There we go. So let's just ask ourselves, how much money was taken in total? Was gratuitously received by these people? In total, we're looking at I haven't practiced saying this number, guys, so just so it's 1,894,923,674 rand, almost 2 billion rand, 1.9 bill. So that's why 17. I'm okay, guys, let's just we can get into that later.
Yeah.
So there's a list about 27 persons there in this report. I guess they don't go into all 72, I assume. But I'm just going to cover the top 3 because that amounts to 72% of the amount uncovered. Just the top 3 persons. And at number 1, we have an amount of 936,669,111 rand. And that's just under half. That went to Vele and its associates. And Vele was the majority stakeholder in the bank this time. Vele, the entity that was headed by Tshifhiwa Matodzi. Number 2, mentioning Tshifhiwa Matodzi, was the second biggest benefactor, allegedly, at 325,896,831. That's about 17% to him and through various schemes, allegedly. And he was the chairman of VBS and Vele. And then there was another amount of 104,130,932, 5%, and that went to the Free State Development Corporation. Now, the amounts after that, I recall, weren't 9 digits. I think they were at least one order of magnitude below. So, but yeah, I just wanted to cover that at the top. So that's basically that's setting the stage for what came before this drop of this report.
Was this the money that was reinvested, or was this the money that was pulled out of the bank?
This is just the cost of the scheme.
Oh, the whole thing. Okay. Yeah.
The cost of the scheme was that 1.9 billion. That's the total amount of money that was looted from VBS, they think, or they allege. That 936 million, that went to Vele and its associates. But what's also interesting is that there's another line item for Matodzi of 300 million. So it's is the state going to recover all of this money? Are the depositors going to get their money back? What? Because even if, let's say this money was taken and the state is okay, cool, we're going to, these deposits were insured. Let's say the deposits were insured. The state makes up that money literally to pay these people back. then this was like 1.9 billion rand of free money that was just created and like just like has to just this the state just has to cover it because these deposits were insured. I'm just this is just conjecture. I don't know, listeners. Let me know if you know more.
But this is fuckery because this is also like when we say the state has to cover it, that's you guys, like the taxpayer, like that's your money.
That's the tax, and we are all taxpayers. South Africans are like when the news talks about taxpayers, they're talking about like people who VAT is a tax. We're all taxpayers, guys. Let's just we're taxpayers. I don't like this whole the taxpayer. Everyone's a taxpayer. Shut up.
Yeah, no, true, 100%. So that's essentially what it is, and the bank presumably, I mean, not presumably, it's insured, so it's going to get bailed out essentially, and that money is not going to be recovered. So essentially, the taxpayer just gave 1.9 billion rand to these people, and listeners, for context, 1.9 billion, I checked how much that converts to in dollars. That's 102, I believe, million US dollars, which is a fuck.
That doesn't sound too bad now. It is obscene. It's obscene money. I mean, like $100 million. What could you not do with that money? You know, it's not even like what you could do. What could you not do? Like we talk about billionaires having too much money.
Right.
Like I'm at 100 million, and I'm just like in my head with this like what do I need more money? Like what do I possibly need to buy? Like, I mean, sure, if I buy like a G650 or whatever, that's like 65 mil or whatever. But do I really need to buy a whole G650? I can just fly commercial, you know? I mean, like, I don't know. Oh, I could charter, actually. Do I really need to own this plane myself? You could literally, anyway.
We're getting into it, yeah.
Yeah. And I'd like to say thank you I spoke a lot. So I don't know how you guys feel about my voice. I don't know how I feel about it, but I hope you're okay with it. That's all I hope. I hope you're okay with it.
I'm okay with your voice.
Satisfied? That's awesome. That is awesome. But you are not the listener. Thank you very much. So,
yeah, as your co-host, I have to listen to your voice more than they do. So I feel
that is true. Oh, actually, you have to edit me. Imagine that, guys. Imagine having to edit me. Wow,
what a mission, hey? What a terrible thing. I'll mention an ex because I feel like it's becoming disproportionate now, the amount of exes you're mentioning. But one of my exes would never believe whenever I would compliment her or whatever, she'd be like, you're being biased though because you like me. And I'm like, that doesn't change the objective side.
Yes, but still.
But also, it's like we're human beings. It's okay if my bias is influencing my belief that you are person X or Y or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, that's fine. As your partner, if I'm being biased and I think you're the most beautiful person in the world, surely that's okay. You know what I mean? Like,
surely it has to be. Like, what is the alternative?
Exactly. What are we talking about here? So that was an argument we often got into. Obviously, like in a sort of playful banterous way.
Often hectic.
No, it was literally like anytime I'd compliment
some armchair psychology.
Imagine. So what is that about?
That is complicated.
Okay, but thank you so much for listening to this week's episode. We will be releasing part 2 next week. It's an interesting sort of new experimental type of podcast that we're trying to do, where we have one of our hosts sort of telling a story or narrating a certain thing to another host who gets to just sit there and listen. It's a really fun sort of process, and hopefully you enjoyed it. And if you did, let us know. Maybe we can do a lot more investigative episodes like that. I know I had fun. I know Akha had fun researching because I could see the excitement on his face while recording. So this was really fun for us. So yeah, let us know, listeners, if you're super cool with that. And yeah, Akha, any final words?
I want to say that we are standing on the shoulders of giants. There are many podcasts in which a few actually that I listen to that have this format of which one host tells the other host about this new thing, and I mean, one person who has been involved in like probably 3 podcasts that do the same thing is like I guess Michael Hobbs, but there's If Books Could Kill podcast where he's with a lawyer and they are just former lawyer, he's now a podcaster, where they just like eviscerate books. There's this other one called Maintenance Phase where they basically talk about like some weird like bullshit in like either like how trans stuff is covered. They spoke about like diet culture, and there's also like You're Wrong About, which covered like OJ and all these. So all this to say, listeners, thank you for listening to Pink Notice. I hope you subscribe. I hope you leave a comment. I hope you enjoy. Please leave comments. Please tell us what you think. I want your feedback. Give a little heart. Doesn't like if you're on sub, if you're still listening, actually listeners, if you're still listening, at the bottom of there's a little like heart icon on Substack. You know, it might not mean a lot to you, but like to me, to my brain, to my soul, it feeds me. I eat, I get full. It's the food to my brain.
Not you getting sensual with our listeners.
So yes, like, comment, subscribe, do all the good things, share it with your friends, share it on Shared, using Shared, do all the good things, subscribe to Pink Notice, and yeah, thank you for listening. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for joining.